What if turning 60 isn't the beginning of the end, but the beginning of the best chapter of your entire life? I'm going to share the 7 specific steps I took to completely reinvent my life at 60, going from feeling stuck, invisible and purposeless to more fulfilled, energized and genuinely excited about each day than I've been in decades. These aren't vague motivational concepts or unrealistic advice requiring wealth or perfect health. These are concrete, practical steps that research from Harvard, Stanford, and Johns Hopkins shows can genuinely transform your mental health, sense of purpose, and overall life satisfaction. The 5th step was the hardest and the one I resisted most stubbornly, but it turned out to be the single change that transformed everything else, and it has nothing to do with money, diet, or physical health. 2 years ago, I sat alone in my empty house on my 60th birthday, feeling completely lost and invisible. My career had ended without ceremony. My children were living their own busy lives across the country, and I realized with painful clarity that I had no idea who I was without my job title and daily work routine. That moment of honest self-assessment, as painful as it was, became the catalyst for the most transformative period of my entire life. Step 1. I released my old identity completely. The first and most crucial step in starting over was letting go of who I used to be professionally and socially. This sounds simple, but it's actually one of the hardest psychological shifts we face after 60. For decades, our identity gets wrapped up in our career title, our professional achievements, our role as breadwinner or caregiver. And when those roles suddenly end, we're left feeling like we've lost ourselves completely. The Stanford University Center on Longevity has published extensive research on identity transition in late adulthood, and their findings are clear and encouraging. Holding on to outdated identities creates significant psychological distress, increases depression and anxiety, and prevents us from moving forward. However, seniors who consciously embrace identity evolution and allow themselves to redefine who they are report dramatically higher life satisfaction, better mental health outcomes, and greater sense of purpose in their later years. I had to actively work on releasing my old identity in very practical ways. I stopped introducing myself at social gatherings by mentioning my former job title or company. I removed all professional credentials and work affiliations from my social media profiles and replaced them with my current interests and activities. I donated my entire professional wardrobe, keeping only a few pieces for special occasions, and bought clothes that reflected who I am now rather than who I was in the office. These concrete actions might seem superficial, but they sent powerful signals to my brain that I was genuinely moving forward into a new phase rather than clinging desperately to the past. When you continue defining yourself by who you used to be rather than who you're becoming, you remain trapped in an identity that no longer serves you or reflects your current reality. This trap prevents you from forming a new sense of purpose because you're constantly comparing your present to your past instead of looking toward your future. It increases feelings of depression and worthlessness because you measure your value by accomplishments that are now behind you. It creates stubborn resistance to new opportunities because they don't fit the narrow definition of who you think you should be. Wallace, who's 62, struggled with depression for 2 years after retiring until he finally stopped defining himself as a retired executive and started seeing himself as a community volunteer and passionate gardener. The solution requires honest self-reflection and deliberate action. Take out a piece of paper right now and write down 3 ways you currently define yourself based on your past career, roles, or accomplishments. Then below that, write 3 new ways you want to define yourself based on your current interests, values, and the person you're becoming. Starting tomorrow, use these new definitions when you think about yourself and when you introduce yourself to others. Stop telling stories about your old job unless specifically asked, and instead talk about what you're doing and learning now. Your past doesn't own your identity anymore. Reclaim who you are today. Step 2. I deliberately built an entirely new social circle. I made the uncomfortable but necessary decision to actively seek new friendships instead of passively waiting for connection to somehow find me. This doesn't mean abandoning old friends, but it does mean acknowledging that as we change and grow, we need connections with people who know us as we are now, not just as we were decades ago. The Harvard Study of Adult Development, which is the longest-running scientific study on happiness spanning over 80 years, has produced one crystal-clear finding. Quality relationships are the single strongest predictor of life satisfaction, health, and longevity. More recent research from psychologists at the University of Michigan specifically found that seniors who actively build new friendships after 60, rather than relying solely on existing relationships, report significantly higher life satisfaction and better mental health. New friendships bring fresh perspectives, different activities, and the opportunity to be seen and valued for who you are right now. I took concrete steps to build new social connections, even though it felt awkward and uncomfortable at first. I joined 3 new groups based on my current interests rather than my past professional connections. A book club at the library, a morning walking group that met at a local park, and a volunteer organization I'd always admired. I committed to attending each group consistently for at least 2 months before deciding if it was right for me, because I knew the first few visits would feel strange. I pushed myself to introduce myself to at least 2 new people at each meeting, and to initiate coffee invitations with people who seemed interesting or kind. These small actions felt forced initially, but within a few months, genuine friendships began forming naturally. If you avoid actively building new social connections, social isolation will intensify gradually until it becomes your default state. Old friendships, while valuable, may not align with your new life direction or interests, and relying exclusively on them can keep you stuck in the past. Loneliness and social isolation accelerate cognitive decline, increase depression and anxiety, weaken immune function, and statistically shorten lifespan by years. You cannot wait for friendship to find you at this age. It won't happen through chance encounters the way it did when you were younger and naturally embedded in work or school environments. Judith, who's 64, felt awkward and out of place joining a pottery class at her community center, but she pushed through the discomfort and now has 5 close friends she sees multiple times weekly for classes, coffee, and meals. The solution requires stepping outside your comfort zone intentionally. This week, join 1 new group, class, or organization based on something you're genuinely interested in or curious about. It can be at your local library, community center, senior center, church, or through volunteer organizations. Commit to attending at least 4 sessions before judging whether it's right for you, because the first few times always feel uncomfortable. At each session, introduce yourself to at least 2 people and ask them one genuine question about themselves. After the 3rd or 4th meeting, invite someone who seems interesting to coffee or lunch outside the group setting. New friendships are waiting for you right now, but you must take the first step this week. Step 3. I found purpose through service, not achievement. I fundamentally shifted my mindset from trying to accomplish impressive things to focusing on how I could serve and contribute to others in simple, practical ways. This shift sounds small, but it changed everything about how I approached each day and how I measured whether my day was meaningful. After spending decades in achievement-oriented career environments where success was measured by promotions, raises, and visible accomplishments, I had to learn an entirely different way of finding meaning. The Mayo Clinic has published compelling research on purpose and longevity, showing that seniors who maintain a strong sense of purpose have approximately 15% lower mortality risk compared to those without clear purpose. Additional studies from Rush University Medical Center in Chicago demonstrate that purpose-driven seniors show measurably better cognitive function, slower rates of cognitive decline, and significantly reduced Alzheimer's risk. I found my new sense of purpose through service rather than achievement, by starting to volunteer at a local food bank 2 mornings each week, helping sort donations and pack boxes for families in need. I also began mentoring young adults in my former career field 1 afternoon each month, offering guidance without any expectation of recognition or reward. These activities gave me a reason to get up, get dressed, and show up consistently. They connected me to something larger than myself and reminded me that my skills, experience, and presence still matter and make a real difference. The satisfaction I get from knowing I helped feed 50 families this week or helped a young person avoid a career mistake I made is deeper and more lasting than any professional achievement I earned in my working years. When you lack a clear sense of purpose, each day feels empty and meaningless, and this purposelessness leads directly to depression, anxiety, and feelings of worthlessness. Without meaningful engagement and contribution, cognitive decline accelerates because your brain isn't being challenged in ways that matter emotionally. You wake up with no compelling reason to get out of bed, and days blur together into weeks and months that feel wasted. Research shows this lack of purpose is as damaging to health as smoking or obesity. Terence, who's 67, struggled with severe depression after his wife passed away until he started tutoring struggling students at the public library twice weekly. And his depression lifted completely within 3 months as he found renewed purpose. The solution is identifying where you can serve rather than what you can achieve. Think about one problem in your community that genuinely concerns you: hunger, literacy, loneliness among seniors, environmental issues, animal welfare, or anything else that stirs compassion in you. Research 3 organizations in your area addressing that specific problem. This week, contact one organization and ask about volunteer opportunities requiring 3 to 5 hours of your time weekly. Don't overthink it or wait for perfect circumstances. Your community needs what you have to offer right now. Make that call today. Step 4. I simplified my finances and lifestyle drastically. I made the deliberate decision to downsize everything in my life: my home, my possessions, my financial accounts, and my overall lifestyle complexity. The freedom and relief that came from this simplification was immediate and profound. Research from Cornell University, published in the Journal of Consumer Research, demonstrates that experiences provide significantly more lasting happiness than possessions for people at every age, but especially for seniors who are reflecting on what truly matters. Additional research from the American Psychological Association on financial stress shows that simplified finances directly reduce anxiety, improve sleep quality, lower blood pressure, and enhance overall quality of life. When you eliminate the burden of maintaining too much stuff, too much space, and too many complicated financial accounts, you free up mental energy, physical energy, and emotional bandwidth for things that actually bring joy and meaning. I took concrete steps to simplify my entire lifestyle. I moved from a 3-bedroom house with a yard requiring constant maintenance to a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment where someone else handles repairs and landscaping. I sold or donated approximately 60% of my possessions, keeping only what I truly use or genuinely love. I consolidated multiple retirement accounts into one simple account I can easily monitor. I created a straightforward monthly budget focused on spending money on experiences like visits with family, classes, travel, and dining with friends, rather than accumulating more possessions I don't need. The mental clarity and reduced stress from these simplifications improved my sleep, my mood, and my overall sense of control over my life. If you continue maintaining too much complexity in your life, financial stress remains a constant background burden, even if you have adequate resources. Maintaining too much space drains your energy through endless cleaning, repairs, and upkeep that prevents you from enjoying your time. Too many possessions require organizing, storing, cleaning, and eventually overwhelm you. Financial complexity with multiple accounts and statements creates confusion and anxiety about whether you're managing everything properly. All this unnecessary complexity steals time, energy, and peace that could be devoted to relationships, learning, travel, and enjoyment. Beverly, who's 61, felt constant stress and exhaustion until she downsized from her large house to a smaller apartment, and she immediately felt lighter, freer, and more energized with her home responsibilities cut by more than half. The solution is choosing one area to simplify this month and taking immediate action. Sell that second vehicle you rarely drive or downsize to a smaller living space that requires less maintenance and lower expenses. Consolidate your bank accounts so you're managing 2 accounts instead of 6. Go through one room and donate everything you haven't used in the past 2 years. Start with whichever simplification feels least overwhelming. And once you experience the freedom it brings, you'll naturally want to simplify more areas. Freedom comes from having less, not more. Start letting go now. Step 5. I admitted I needed help and asked for it. This was the change I resisted most fiercely but ultimately needed most desperately. I had to accept that asking for help isn't weakness or failure, but rather wisdom and strength. Our generation was raised to be self-sufficient, independent, and to never burden others with our needs. That mindset serves us well in many ways, but taken to an extreme, it becomes dangerous stubbornness that leads to isolation, preventable accidents, and unnecessary suffering. Johns Hopkins University has published extensive research on social support and health outcomes, showing that seniors who appropriately ask for and graciously accept help have measurably better mental health, faster recovery from illness and injury, and statistically longer lifespans. Conversely, excessive pride and unwillingness to accept reasonable help correlates strongly with social isolation, dangerous living situations, and faster overall decline. I had to consciously work on accepting help in practical areas where I was struggling unnecessarily. I hired a teenager from my neighborhood to help me with technology frustrations that were taking hours of my time and causing tremendous stress. I asked my neighbor, who's great with smartphones, to spend an hour teaching me how to properly use features I'd been avoiding. I accepted my daughter's offer to help manage my medical appointment scheduling using a shared online calendar since I'd been missing appointments or showing up on wrong days. These small acts of accepting help didn't diminish my independence. They actually preserved and enhanced my independence by preventing small problems from becoming crises that could have seriously compromised my ability to live independently. When you stubbornly refuse reasonable help out of pride, you set yourself up for dangerous situations including falls, accidents, and emergencies that could have been prevented with small assistance. Your isolation increases because you stop reaching out to anyone for anything, and that self-imposed isolation accelerates cognitive and physical decline. Simple problems that could be solved in minutes with help become overwhelming crises when you insist on handling everything alone, despite lacking the skills or physical ability. Ironically, refusing small help now leads to losing independence entirely later when preventable crises force major interventions. Raymond, who's 69, refused to ask his grandson for computer help for over a year, struggling alone with technology until he finally swallowed his pride and asked for a tutorial, discovering an entire world of online connections, entertainment, and resources he'd been missing. The solution requires identifying specific areas where you're struggling and then asking a specific person for specific help this week. Think about 3 tasks or challenges that frustrate you or exhaust you every week. Choose one of those three, identify one person who could help with it, and this week ask them directly. Practice saying, "I could use your help with this," without apologizing excessively, without over-explaining, and without treating it like a huge imposition. Most people genuinely want to help and feel honored to be asked. Accepting appropriate help now preserves your independence for years to come. Ask for it today. Step 6. I committed to learning something completely new. I deliberately chose to become a beginner again in something I'd never done before, and this decision changed both my brain function and my confidence in ways I never anticipated. There's something profoundly transformative about putting yourself in the position of not knowing, of making mistakes, of progressing slowly from complete incompetence toward basic competence in a new skill. Harvard Medical School and the National Institute on Aging have published robust research on neuroplasticity, showing that learning new complex skills creates new neural pathways at any age, improves overall cognitive function across multiple domains, and provides significant protection against dementia and cognitive decline. Being a beginner also builds psychological resilience, increases confidence through mastering challenges, and reminds you that growth and learning don't stop at any arbitrary age. I took the concrete step of enrolling in a beginner Spanish class at my local community college, despite never having studied foreign languages and feeling intimidated about learning alongside younger students. I also joined a beginner's photography class to learn how to properly use the camera features on my phone. I committed to practicing Spanish for 20 to 30 minutes every single day, using a combination of my class assignments and a free language app. The first few weeks were humbling and frustrating as my brain struggled to form new language patterns, but after about 6 weeks, I started actually retaining vocabulary and forming simple sentences. The sense of accomplishment from this new learning boosted my confidence in other areas of my life where I'd been hesitant to try new things. If you avoid learning new skills because you're too old or it's too hard, your brain becomes increasingly rigid and less adaptable to any kind of change or challenge. Your confidence gradually erodes because you're not giving yourself opportunities to overcome challenges and prove your capability. Cognitive decline accelerates when your brain isn't regularly challenged with genuinely novel learning that requires sustained attention and practice. You start defining yourself as someone who can't learn new things, and that identity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that limits every area of your life. Camille, who's 65, always wanted to play piano but thought she was too old to start, finally took beginner lessons and now performs simple pieces at her senior center's monthly social gatherings. The solution is choosing one skill you've always been curious about or wanted to learn and then registering for a beginner class this week. Look at your local community center, library, senior center, community college, or online learning platforms. Choose something that genuinely interests you, not something you think you should learn. Commit to attending or practicing at least twice weekly for 3 full months before judging your progress or deciding whether to continue. Give yourself permission to be bad at it initially, to make mistakes, and to progress slowly. Your brain is waiting to grow and form new connections. Register for that class today. Step 7. I created non-negotiable daily routines for body and mind. I established simple daily practices that became the stable foundation on which everything else in my new life was built. Without structure and routine, even the best intentions evaporate into aimless days that blend together without purpose or progress. Research from the University of California, published in the Journal of Aging Studies, shows that consistent daily routines reduce anxiety and stress, improve cognitive function and memory, and significantly increase overall life satisfaction in seniors. Structure provides a sense of control, predictability, and purpose that's especially important when you're no longer structured by employment or family responsibilities. These routines don't need to be complicated or time-consuming, but they need to be consistent and non-negotiable, regardless of how you feel on any particular day. I created 4 simple daily routines that I follow every single day. A 30-minute walk immediately after breakfast for physical health, 20 minutes of reading before lunch for mental stimulation, an afternoon phone call or visit with a friend or family member for social connection, and 5 minutes of gratitude journaling before bed for emotional well-being. These 4 practices touch all the essential areas of health and well-being, take less than 2 hours total throughout the entire day, and have become as automatic as brushing my teeth. On days when I follow these routines, I feel grounded, purposeful, and satisfied. On rare days when circumstances prevent my routines, I notice immediately how unsettled and aimless I feel, which reinforces how important these simple structures have become. When your days lack structure and routine, they feel aimless and unproductive, even if you're busy with random activities. Health habits become inconsistent because there's no established time or trigger for them, and inconsistent habits produce no results. Your sense of control and stability disappears, increasing anxiety about whether you're managing your life well. Days blur together without distinct markers or accomplishments, and weeks pass without you being able to identify what you actually did or achieved. This lack of structure accelerates feelings of depression and purposelessness. Sherman, who's 63, felt lost and depressed after retiring until he established a simple morning routine of a 20-minute walk, coffee with his neighbor, and 30 minutes of reading, and that structure transformed his entire outlook and energy level. The solution requires deciding on 4 non-negotiable daily routines tonight and starting all 4 tomorrow morning. Choose 1 routine for physical health like walking or stretching, 1 for mental stimulation like reading or puzzles, 1 for social connection like calling a friend, and 1 for emotional well-being like journaling or meditation. Write these 4 routines down with specific times attached to each one. Set phone reminders if needed. Commit to maintaining all 4 daily for 30 consecutive days minimum before modifying or abandoning any of them. Structure creates freedom, not restriction. Build your routine tonight and start it tomorrow morning. 2 years after that painful 60th birthday when I felt completely lost, I'm living proof that it's never too late to completely reinvent yourself and create a life that's more fulfilling than you imagined possible. Starting over at 60 isn't about denying your age or pretending to be younger. It's about refusing to let your age define your possibilities or limit your growth. These 7 steps are practical, achievable, and don't require wealth, perfect health, or ideal circumstances. You don't need anyone's permission, perfect conditions, or years of planning. You need these 7 specific decisions and the courage to act on them starting today. Which of these 7 steps resonates most strongly with you right now? Which one scares you the most? Drop a comment and tell me, because your answer reveals exactly where your greatest growth opportunity lies. If you know someone over 60 who's feeling stuck or invisible, share this video with them immediately, because these steps could genuinely change their life trajectory. Hit that like button if you're ready to start over regardless of your age, and subscribe to this channel because I'm sharing real transformation stories and practical steps for thriving after 60, not just surviving it.